Mick Garris, and welcome once again to the Fantasy Film Festival, where we show the best science fiction, fantasy, and horror films we can find and show them as they were intended, uncut and uninterrupted. Tonight we have what has become a cult favorite since its release in 1975, A Boy and His Dog. The film was based on a story, a novella by Harlan Ellison, and we have Harlan Ellison here with us. The story won a Nebula Award, which you see right here, and it's in this book, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. And our guest, Harlan Ellison. Hello.
Hello, Mick.
Good to meet you, Harlan. I'd like to find out, first of all, what the inspiration of the novella was.
Well, a story never comes from one single place. There are a lot of different inputs that form it. For this particular story, it was basically the confrontation during the 60s of young and old in this country. Principally the week following the Kent State Massacre at Kent State University. I either read or heard a news item that said the Kiwanis in Kent, Ohio, those wonderful fat businessmen, the burghers of our time, got together for their weekly luncheon, you see, and they passed a motion that they felt that the National Guard should have slaughtered all the kids. One of the more charming remarks of our time. And I thought to myself, there is really a huge gap in this country in understanding between the young and the old. And at that time, I had a dog, a Puli, a Hungarian sheepdog named Abu. And the dog, this probably is a sad comment on me, but it's probably the closest friend I've ever had in my life. And I wrote the story for the dog, literally wrote the story for the dog. And it's a study of survival, and all of these things sort of came together. There was also an item, Bert Prelutsky had done it in L.A. magazine in his Westward series, right, about a dog at LAX that sniffed out marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I used that as an element in the story. It was a story that immediately caught on, and people admired quite a lot, and it's been we did it as a television series which never got off the ground, and this film which has been very, very popular.
Right. It's very rare, it seems, that a writer is satisfied with a film or happy with a film that comes out of his original work. It seems to be the case with you and A Boy and His Dog. What are the problems in transferring a literary work to film?
Well, one of the widely believed myths is that a good book makes a bad film. A book and a film are two different things. They work in two different ways. There's a different sensibility behind them, and I think it's impossible to take a book one for one and make it into a film. You take a look at something like Moby Dick, which is very, very multi-level, and so consequently, as a film, it seems shallow, even despite a really fine screenplay by Ray Bradbury. In this case, it was a fairly simple story, and it was fairly easy to translate into a film. The problems arose basically because of the subject matter. It's a very violent, very tough, very mean, and amoral story, and consequently the same kind of film. Satisfied, you used the word satisfied, I am, on some, satisfied by the film. I think it's quite a good film. L.Q. Jones did what I consider to be an extraordinarily fine job. My dislike of the film lies in the area of sexism, because L.Q., being a good old boy from Texas, right, doesn't understand that, it seems to me. And when I saw the first rough cut of the film, that was the thing that struck me most, that a lot of his personal feeling about women and male-female relationships had crept into the film, which is very, very, very dangerous in this film because of the ending, which I will not tip or right, go into. But it's an ending that is easily misunderstood.
Now, you've gotten a lot of flack because you are a staunch defender of women's rights and the like because of this film.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work for the ERA, and invariably I will have some woman stand up in an audience and say, if you respect women so much and you're so much for women's rights, how could you do such and such a movie? And I have to say to them, well, I didn't do the movie. I didn't write the movie. I didn't direct the movie. It's the work of L.Q. Jones, and it's his perceptions, but it is based on my story. And it's always the ending that they complain about. Well, the ending is perfectly logical in terms of the society that I set up in the story. It's a purely survival society. in which, and I patterned it after the historical precedent. In any society where you've had a decimating war, you can take the War of the Roses or the Crusades. The things that become of value to the average person are a place to sleep, food, and weapons, and women become chattel. They become part of the prize. And the story is very carefully and baldly intended to say this is not a good thing, that rape is not a cute and terrific item, and it should be done away with. But unfortunately, audiences seem to have a capacity for horror that has been unparalleled since the days of Torquemada. The more terrible you make something to show people that this is not good, the more the loons who sit in the little theaters in the valley, pound their knees and say, "Oh yeah, kill him." And
Dawn of the Dead, an example.
Yeah, exactly. They want more car crashes and they want more ripped out vitals. And it seems to me that the whole concept of allegory is been divested from film. You just can't do it.
Did you have any input at the time the screenplay was being written?
Very little. This was one of the few occasions in my life, in 25 years of writing, that I was not doing much writing. I don't know what it was. I guess I just got tired is what it was. And I was supposed to be doing the screenplay, and I wrote about the first 9 minutes of this film are actually mine, from my script. The rest of it is all L.Q. Jones. The only input that I had thereafter was, by the way, I think it's an insight into my wonderful warped personality, that the meanest line in the film occurs in that first 9 minutes. The only input thereafter was when the film had been done, and I saw a rough cut, and it was really full of sexist lines that I knew were going to kill it on the college campus, mostly because they came out of the mouth of the dog. Now, people who have not seen the film are going to say, out of the mouth of the dog. Yes. The dog in this film is telepathic. It communicates with its master. And in this film, the dog is the last remnant of civilization. He is witty, he is wise, he is quick, clever, he has humanity, whereas the human beings have been reduced to the level of animals. It's a complete flip-flop, which is why I use the title of Boy and His Dog to mimic the Albert Payson Terhune dogs, those sweetness and light dog stories. And when I saw these, when I heard these sexist lines, I really got crazed behind it, and I said, LQ, you can't let these go this way. And he said, well, we've used up all the money, there's no money left to do any dubbing, we can't take it to the writers' studios and have the sound redone, we just haven't got the money. So I said, okay, there's a science fiction convention coming up. It was the World Science Fiction Convention in Washington, D.C., I guess 4 years ago, whatever it was. And I said, give me as many outtakes as you've got. And we cut them up into little 5-frame snippets, and I sold the damn things for $10 a piece. And he needed something like $700, and I hawked them like a fish peddler at the convention.
Set up a little stall, right?
And came back with a bag full of money, dollar bills, $5 bills, and I dumped them on his desk and said, okay, go take those rotten lines out. And he took them all out, with the exception of the last line in the film, that I absolutely despise.
That is the funniest way of film financing I've ever heard of in my life. What happened to the TV show? I know there was a sequel and a prequel story, weren't there, that you wrote? Yeah, well, there is a prequel to this story, A Boy and His Dog, called Egg Sucker. And it's a short story, and it's been published. And the sequel is called Blood's a Rover, from the poem, that's one of us, not totally blown away, who wrote the poem, for blood's a rover that never rests, or something, blah, blah, blah. And the dog's name is Blood, and he's a dog and is a rover, and wonderful, clever play on words. Anyhow, moving right along. Yes. Was there the TV show, were these to be drawn from these stories in addition to the original?
No, the original was not to be used at all. It was a combination of Egg Sucker and A Boy and Blood's a Rover.
I see.
And what happened was that after having been affiliated with LQ, LQ is not one of the easiest human beings in the world to deal with. I'm being politic in saying that. Right. He has a personality that is a cross, I suspect, between Jack the Ripper and Vlad the Impaler. You see, and he and I are both fairly tough individuals, and we don't take any bull from either one. But he likes to have his way, and I didn't want to work with him again. And all of a sudden, I found that he had managed somehow to sell the idea of A Boy and His Dog as a television series with a film, with a made-for-movie. I used to be able to speak fairly steadily
Throw
and
on the lights, and there you
go. A made-for-television film to precede it, a 2-hour film. And the only problem was that he didn't have the rights to do it on TV. I owned the rights. But he had gone ahead and made this deal. So suddenly we found ourselves, if you'll pardon the expression, in bed with one another business-wise. And we went to NBC, and I thought they were deranged for even considering the idea of doing. I mean, this is a movie about sex, violence, and various other tasty subjects, the things that make life worth living. And I didn't know how they were going to do it, but as it turned out, I was able to write a screenplay, a 2-hour screenplay called Bloods Are Over, that worked very well indeed. It fell apart before it ever got on the air. The reasons I subsequently found out from network execs who were no longer with NBC, met them at a party or something like that, and they told me what it was. And rather than leave Theta and myself open for a lawsuit, I would just as soon say that they were happy with the script, they were not happy with the business arrangements and the personnel, because LQ and I were both tied to it. And I would let people wonder whether I mean me or him, whatever, it doesn't matter.
We're almost out of time. I'd like to ask one quick question. Your writings propose several different possible futures. Are you an optimist or a pessimist as concerns our future?
I'm a pragmatist. My basic feeling about the human race is that any species that can paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling and write Moby Dick and put a human being on the moon does not necessarily have to settle for Charlie's Angels and McDonald's Toad Burgers. But left to our own devices, I suspect we will always, act like animals. I mean, look at people in gas lines shooting each other. But spero meliora, as they say in Latin. I hope for better things.
Okay, we all hope for better things. We've been talking with Harlan Ellison, and we will be seeing in just a moment A Boy and His Dog, based on the story A Boy and His Dog.
A deeply enriching experience.
Right. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Harlan, for joining me here on the show.